So this is what I mean when I say adding unique detail information to the already existing normal map. So through Crazy Bump and Photoshop, I managed to get something like this for my normal pass. But then adding a layer on top, I could go in and start freeforming the additional details and making it more unique, adding little bumps, folds, and scratches, cuts, little dots. I did use the alphas within the 3D coat, and also just usually I stick with this square brush, adding veins to the eyes, and etc, etc. And now you can totally see how this becomes beneficial, I guess, when you do separate your model beforehand, because you have the full control of the eyes. By pressing F, now we can orbit around it, and we can start painting our information. So what I usually tend to do is I turn off everything except what I'm focusing on, and in this case just the normal. So turning off the opacity and the gloss intensity, I can start playing around with the depth and the opacity. The roughness and the metalness is set it to 0 because those guys have no effect anyways because they're turned off. And then in layers, I usually turn off the opacity to 0, roughness to 0, and metalness to 0 as well. And the depth, which is depth equals to normal, it's at 100. Same trend you can see if I reveal all and then go into my metalness. Then on that layer, everything is turned off except for metalness, and that's at 100. And same thing with diffuse, everything is going to be at 0 except opacity. As you can see here. Some of the problems in 3D code that I wasn't able to figure out were making UV changes in Max, then trying to update those changes in 3D code without fully reloading the mesh and resetting up the layers. Another one would be importing a roughness map from Photoshop into code and expecting code to recognize the map as its native roughness layer. But I'm sure that's my own fault, and I could make it work with software if I dug deeper into it. There must be workarounds around those problems. For each of those texture maps, such as cloth, feather, leather, metal, skin, you have to figure out the balance for roughness and spec, the albedo, diffuse, and normal information individually. You're gonna have lots of layers, but once you figure it all out, you can make a copy of them all, collapse them, and bring those collapsed layers into your PSD texture file. Let me demonstrate that, and let me show you of how I went about organizing the layer structure within Photoshop. Just to show you guys what I had beforehand. So this normal information, this normal map, was created in 3D code with using 3D code's native brushes and alphas as well. The thing here, as you can see, if you start really delving deep into it, then you'll realize that things are very choppy. For instance, this kind of little bumpy pattern is not following through everywhere. Also, the same thing with, as you can see, the pores, the skin pores, certain blotches. Some of them are just spotty. They're not really uniform. They're kind of all over the place. I think this would be a good example to show that some details are much bigger than others, while they're all the same type of alpha. Also, there's a problem when I'm trying to basically paint normal information around certain cuts. And in this case, for instance, this part is actually the armor piece. All of them are. And as you can see that around these cuts right here, these guys, they merge in with one of these pieces, and those pieces are metal-like stitches. So sometimes it's really difficult to actually get them all lined up correctly. You end up kind of patching the problem instead of solving the problem completely. After doing that, I wasn't really satisfied with the results, so I used the Photoshop and Crazy Bump methodology of working, and I created those independent textures, as you can see here. This is a metal texture, then this is the leather big here as well. This is leather small. This is the feather texture, and this is the kind of like the cloth texture as well. So then what I did was I made them all tileable, 4-way tileability, and then plop them in. It looks something like this. For instance, let's take a look at leather big. So it's this big space over here, and this is the selection set. When I select it, I select all the elements that are going to be leather big. In here, what I did was I clipped the layer to the bottom of it. So if we isolate it and we look at it, then you see that this is 4-way tileable leather big texture. So by clipping the texture to the selection set, let's set it back to whatever 80 it was, then only that area and region becomes tileable. So that's why on my character I have his armor piece kind of offset, so he gets a different pattern on the front side of the armor. And same thing goes for metal, same thing goes for feather and cloth, as you can see here. And then drawing the normal information in 3D Coat, you take that layer and you bring it in here, and it looks something like this. I cut out all the pieces that I didn't want, didn't need, and then you combine it in Crazy Bump or through other methods so you get the correct normal colors. You collapse it all and you have one layer of normals. Same idea for diffuse. So the skin was painted. These are the legs. This is the lizard's tail, the arms, the face, the bottom of the face. This is the mouth kind of part at the bottom of the head, the eyes, of course. Those pieces were hand painted using alphas and brushes within 3D Coat. But then, because I already made all the other textures such as metal, leather big, leather small, and cloth, I just brought in the selection sets, changed the color to whatever I desired. In this situation, if you expand the diffuse, you see that I have my feather, for instance, and the feather has color to it. So right here, this is the feather texture, and this is the kind of the diffuse information that I brought over from other files. Same thing with, let's say, leather big. I brought in kind of the minimum amount of layers that are needed. Just started playing with blending the colors together. So this is very iterative kind of workflow, because at any point you can change anything you want. As you can see, the metal map is very simple here, just black or white. This is the roughness kind of version 1, what I hand painted, hand made within 3D Coat. Wasn't really satisfied with the results, so using, once again, bringing back all the information from my other Photoshop layers, from my tileable 4-way textures, I now started playing around and balancing out the roughness map. And it's very trial and error kind of thing. You make a change, and then either in Unreal 4 or in Marmoset you look how to, I was using Marmoset in this case, I was looking at what actually changed and what affected. In this layer right here, I went in, before I had my tileable skin, right, texture, but I wanted to add a little bit uniqueness to it. So looking at the normals that I've already created and made, I created a layer on top of that normal information, and I just started painting in manually using Photoshop brushes just a little bit of uniqueness, adding a little bit more of unique elements to the already existing roughness map. This is the material element. This is kind of the battle plan beforehand. I want to include this PSD file in all the other files as well with this tutorial, so you guys can actually open it up and check out and kind of see the thought process that went in. This is my metal 4-way tileable texture, so the selections look something like this, and basically one is layering upon the other. And in the height section, the height is basically the same as the selections underneath, but adjusted to balance out the actual information that's going to go into crazy bump. And then I have my spec and my colors and all those things. All those groups have lots of layers in them. So what I'm saying is, basically when you take this metal map and you import it back into your character's main texture file, then you have to kind of tidy it up and combine. So things like this, I left it open for you guys to kind of check out, but essentially what you want to do is combine all those files, make them all one layer, and then save that out, but then have another file somewhere else as a backup. So by combining it all, you're minimizing the size of the file, and basically it's straight to the point. It's very clean. You know exactly what's happening, instead of each group having 10 to 15 layers in it that can get way too distracting and just balloon out of control. But I'm not going to do it here in this case. I just want to leave it all as is. I definitely rambled on way too long, and this clip went into many different aspects of texture creation. I hope that you found some of that information useful, and let's just wrap it all up by talking about some of the ideas in incorporating within your second pass of your animations. Let's get into it.